Hello. Welcome to another AJATT slash Mia slash Refold slash whatever progress video. This one marks 18 months, so already been at this for a year and a half now. It doesn't feel like that long since I started learning Japanese, but the progress has definitely flown by, which is quite a nice thing. Starting to get into that later stage of the AJATT journey. Something I didn't really think too much about when I started, of course. I was just focused on getting through the initial stages, but now I am moving on. So yeah, getting right into it, just cover what I've been doing these past 6 months. So the answer to that is mainly a lot of reading. In particular, I finished just recently an 11-volume light novel series. So that is the first light novel series I've ever finished, which has been pretty fun. I was really getting into it midway through, which is why I ended up reading all of it very quickly. It comes and goes every now and then. I'll find a series that I really get into and I'll just binge watch it or binge read it, but it's always nice when you have those. Personally, it felt very easy, especially after the first one when I was getting kind of used to the author's writing style. And yeah, most of the novels or most of the volumes I was reading, I didn't really find that many sentences I didn't understand. So I'm thinking maybe I need to start reading harder stuff. In particular, more literature type novels, I guess. I did actually read some, so I was thinking earlier in the 6 months that I should probably read some kind of normal Japanese literature that Japanese people might know. So I went for the obvious pick, Murakami Haruki. I read, I forget the titles of the books because it's been a while, but I think one was Listen to the Song of the Wind or something. It was his first book. And then I watched the one where it's a girl staying overnight in Tokyo or something. So yeah, if anyone out there knows Murakami, then you'll probably know what I'm talking about. But those are the two that I read. And honestly, I was a little bit surprised because they didn't feel that much harder than the light novels that I've been reading. It's just that those type of books tend to have more metaphors and analogies. So they'll describe something using some kind of real world event or place or something. And typically there, I get to learn some new words because if they say, oh, it was as peaceful as the Mediterranean Sea or something. I think Mediterranean Sea was one of the things that I learned in one of those books. Then I obviously have to learn the word for Mediterranean Sea, which I didn't know before, and just watching like regular anime and light novels, I probably wouldn't have learned that word. That's one of the it's one of the harder points of becoming really good at Japanese from just immersing in regular stuff that you like, is that you won't be exposed to all kinds of vocab that a regular Japanese person growing up and going through the school system might. So in the school system, they'd probably learn the word for Mediterranean Sea and a lot of other words, but now I have to play catch up. So I think a good way to do that is to read novels like this. That'll give me a much wider scope of vocabulary to work from. And I think I want to work some more stuff into it, but to be honest, I'm trying to look for stuff that's a bit more interesting because they weren't bad novels, but I wasn't very enthralled by them, so to speak. So maybe I need to keep trying, or maybe I need to find something a bit more my taste. If anyone does do Japanese reading and has some suggestions, I'm open to take them, because especially after I finish that light novel series, I am still in the process of looking for new stuff to read, and it's not so easy. Besides reading novels and light novels, I've also been playing some visual novels on the side, like I usually do. They're pretty nice for a change up in immersion because you get to. They're sort of like a light novel in terms of language level, but they're much more direct with context because you can see people and see what they're doing. Also, they have voice lines of dialogue, So it's very easy to make high quality audio cards because you can just hit replay on a line of dialogue and record it and boom, copy paste that into an audio card. So I sometimes do that just to make audio cards like that. Manga I just read on the side, sort of just a filler, like when I don't feel like reading a novel or watching an anime or anything else. I just open up some manga and read a few chapters. It's been a good filler. Some video audio immersion as usual, but not too much because, well, honestly, I've just been slacking on that area. But in terms of audio, it's just been the usual passive immersion. So whenever I go out for a walk or I work out or I do some chores, I plug my headphones in and I listen to shows that I've already watched before. And I think that's a really good way to just build up lots of passive immersion. It definitely improved my listening skills a lot compared to if I hadn't done that. So I will definitely continue doing it for the time being until I move on to some other kind of passive audio immersion, which I'll talk about later. Besides that, most of the video immersion has been coming from YouTube. So I mentioned before in a previous video that I like to watch Japanese konto on YouTube. They're just very entertaining and they make for a nice little slice of life, easy listening practice. Sometimes I also watch vlog type videos because they're kind of just speaking into the camera and it's just almost like pure audio immersion at that point. So I do enjoy those sometimes. But yeah, not too much because YouTube is kind of hit and miss with the interesting content at this point. I haven't really found a niche that I just really enjoy watching. So yeah, until I get myself to watch some more shows, it's going to be mostly that. Also, something I said I would do in the last video that I did complete was Dogen's phonetics course. So Dogen has a Patreon, and on that Patreon, if you contribute, I think it's like $10 a month or something, you get access to his full phonetics course, which in particular for me, the interesting part was the pitch accent part. So the pitch accent course is where I first kind of formally studied Japanese pitch accent. Up until that point, all I had really done was memorize the pitch accent for, words that I learned and learn the 4 basic pitch accent patterns. Now that is actually very useful because when I was watching the course, one of the first things he does after the introduction is break down the most common pitch accent rules. And what I noticed was that because I'd done so much looking up pitch accent, and once you look up a lot of pitch accents, you start to try to guess in your head what pitch accent a word's going to be based on how it's structured and what kind of word it is and the context. And what I noticed is I was getting pretty good at guessing the pitch accent of words that I was looking up. And that intuition later built up into rules that I found because when I was watching Dogen's videos, he would break down some rule, and I would often be just nodding my head saying, oh yeah, I've definitely experienced this before. Good to know that it's an actual rule out there and not just something I was noticing but wasn't actually there. So I think that's probably one of the advantages to doing pitch accent study later in Japanese rather than earlier. So as long as you keep pitch accent in mind and you memorize the pitch accent of words, I think the actual pitch accent study of rules and stuff, it can wait till later. Before output, but it can wait till later. So I definitely do recommend that if anyone's planning to do the same thing that I'm doing. So yeah, besides Dogen's phonetics course, I also did buy Shinmeikai. So Shinmeikai is a Japanese accent dictionary. So like the title suggests, it's a dictionary where we can look up the pitch accents of individual words, and they have quite a lot of entries. But to be honest, that's not very interesting to me because for convenience purposes, I just prefer to use an online dictionary to look up words rather than flipping through a paper dictionary. It's just, I guess preference, but also practicality wise, I think it's just a lot easier to use an online dictionary, especially when the one that I use, you can make a sentence card instantly from it. It just has a lot of advantages for me. But the really interesting part of Shimenkai and why I got it is because they have a glossary / reference section in the back, and it's basically a big breakdown of Japanese pitch accent all the way to little details and strategies on how to pick it up, and they even come with like some kind of listening course. They came with a CD, which is interesting because I don't have any kind of CD player, so I'm gonna have to figure that one out. Maybe they offer a download somewhere on their website, but yeah, I'll hopefully be able to use that as well. I haven't actually gone through that Japanese pitch accent course that they have, or the glossary. I've flipped through it and it looks pretty interesting, looks pretty useful, but I think at this stage I've done a pretty solid amount of pitch accent study for what I think I need for output, and I'll probably come back to it at a later point. So maybe after I've settled into output, I'll pick up the Shimenkai again. So yeah, besides that, I'll probably spend the rest of the year focusing on watching shows because I've really been slacking on that. I just been slacking on finding good shows that I really want to watch and making myself watch them, so I'm kind of doing that now. If I don't like the shows that I have lined up right now, I'll probably just watch some random stuff on Japanese Netflix. But yeah, I just gotta get those hours in, I guess. Alright, so before moving on to the next part of the video, I think I'll quickly show the Anki. So the Anki has been steadily progressing. I do my usual 10 cards a day, and with that has come 11k total words in Morphman. It's not very important, this number specifically, because it's just a rough approximation, but it is kind of cool to see it hit 11k. I think it was past 10k maybe in the last video. So yeah, now we've hit 11k. I'm not sure where this will end up in like the next 6 months, but it would be pretty cool if it can get close to 12k. Also, something I didn't mention before was I recently switched operating systems. As you might notice, I'm no longer on Windows 10, and I have a couple of reasons for that, but I won't get into that in this video because that's not really the point. But one of the reasons I'm bringing it up is because when I was porting over my Anki, I didn't port over all of the Morphman databases correctly, I guess, because this number was actually higher on my Windows 10. Not at the time, but you know, obviously now it's higher. But when I ported it over, it was lower, and I was trying to figure out why, and I couldn't figure it out. So I was just like, I don't care. I'll just take a lower number. So probably this number should be a bit higher. I forget exactly how much I lost. I think maybe it was like 500 to 1,000, somewhere in that range. So it could be actually sitting at 1,200, or not 1,200, 12,000, if that didn't happen. But like I said before, it's not a big deal to me. I don't really care too much about this number. It's just something nice to look at as I keep reviewing. Speaking of reviews, I recently ran out of new cards, which is something I did in the beginning of the 6 months was I was reading so much that I was making so many new cards that I built up this huge backlog. I think of like 200 cards or something, and that was basically enough for me to last just months, especially since I was still making new cards a couple a day on average. But recently I haven't been making too many cards, and yeah, that's kind of come to fruition now because I recently ran out of cards a few days ago. So I'm back to having to make at least 10 cards per day, which is something I haven't done for quite a while. Yeah, it's not really a big deal. It's quite easy for me to make new cards now because I have a lot of saved sentences from various sources that I never end up using. So I'll be digging through those. Yeah, just something I thought I'd mention, that I finally gotten to the point where I have to make cards again. Really quickly, I'll go through the number of sentence cards I have. This is 5,522. Not too interesting because I think this number has been in the 5,000s for quite a while. Probably will stay that way. Hopefully I can get kind of close to 6k cards in the next 6 months, but yeah, the number of cards is not very important. I actually remember in the original like AJATT/MIA reference guide, if anyone remembers that, they had like a breakdown of stages, and one of the things about the stages was they described like how many cards you should have at each stage. So it's like, you know, get to this stage, make 2k more sentence cards or whatever. So at the time, back when that was still a thing, I was thinking more about the number of cards, but now obviously that it's not such a big deal anymore. So I just like to see it go up, and if it continues going up, I'll be happy. So last thing before I move on is I think I'll go cover. I just want to mention this one real quick. Yeah, this is what I've been using to make new sentence cards. So if anyone has a Kindle, anytime you highlight a sentence on Kindle, it gets saved into this text file that you can just see when you plug in your Kindle into the computer. And if you upload that text file to this site, myclippings.io, it'll make this nice list for you. And the cool thing about this list is after you copy and paste, make a sentence card, and you decide to delete this note, it'll stay deleted even after you re-import it. So like, you know, you import it, you make a bunch of sentence cards, and then later on you re-import it because you've highlighted more sentences. It'll remember which ones you've deleted, so you don't have to delete them again. Just something that's nice and convenient for making a bunch of sentence cards really quickly. If using a Kindle to learn Japanese, I definitely recommend this. But yeah, that's about it for Anki. Moving on to the next 6 months. What am I going to be doing? The answer to that is pretty simple. It's output. So I mentioned it before. I think the next 6 months is going to be mainly focused on output, and in particular I'm going to be going through the Refold site, stage 3. So this is the learn to speak section, as you can see. Convert your acquired language into speaking ability. I haven't read any of this so far, so this will be all new to me, but I've been holding off on this for quite a while because I wanted to immerse quite a lot before I really get into output. I just want to be really solid on immersion. I think on Refold, they say as soon as you can watch a full television episode aimed for adults in Japanese without needing to look stuff up, then you can start this. But yeah, I've been at that level for quite a while, so I decided to just keep going with immersion for the time being. But yeah, now I'm starting to move on to this stage 3. Very exciting. So yeah, we have a starting output activity guide, and something very interesting to me has been adopt a parent. So I think this is going to be, I think they were talking about shadowing in this section. I haven't read it, so I'm not sure, but shadowing is definitely something I want to get into because it sounds very interesting to me, and I really hope that if I do that and I follow all these steps, I'll have very solid pronunciation and speaking. Obviously I have a good history. If anyone's watched the first video, I mentioned that my Russian pronunciation was definitely not one of my issues when I was learning Russian. Actually, I had quite good Russian pronunciation, all things considered. And I'm hoping that'll be the same for Japanese. Maybe Russian was just a fluke and I happen to be good at it, but we'll see when it comes to Japanese. Yeah. But I'm gonna try my best to make sure that I have good output, because it's just something that I guess I take a lot of pride in, being really good at whatever I choose to spend this amount of hours. You know, if I spend thousands and thousands of hours learning Japanese, I may as well do it well, right? But yeah, we also have learning to write, which is kind of interesting. I don't know if they mean handwriting here. They probably don't, but I think for typing I'm okay with Japanese. I don't think it's going to be too big a problem. I might be a little bit slow because I don't type nearly as much in Japanese as I do English, so I may have to do some practice, but I think I'll pick it up pretty quickly. Learning to speak, obviously this is very important, and I will go through all this, but yeah, I just wanted to show this because this is pretty much what I'm going to be focusing on once the new year hits. So because of that, I won't be immediately starting output. I'll actually just be going through this stuff, like preparing for output. And when I feel ready, I will have to search for a language partner, which is, yeah, the first time I have to actually talk to someone else in starting this journey. It's going to be very different. Obviously, with immersion, you don't need anybody else. All you need is like a bunch of TV shows and reading, and you're set. But yeah, now I actually have to find another human being to converse with. I'm not too worried. I'm not like extremely nervous about speaking. A little bit nervous because, just talking to strangers can be a bit nervous, but in terms of me sucking too bad to actually hold a conversation, I'm not too worried about that. I'm more worried about, can I find someone who's willing to just be my Japanese conversation partner, especially when I'm just starting output and I might not be very talkative or easy to talk to, I guess. But I'm not really sure where I'll start looking for a language partner. I've thought about it a little bit, and I think I might try at first a language exchange community. So for example, there are like English-Japanese language exchange discords. I was in one of those for I think only about 2 weeks before I found out about AJATT, and once I found out about AJATT, I just kind of left because I knew that I would just be solo immersing for a very long time. But I think the problem with that is there is that kind of expectation that, oh, if you speak Japanese with me, I'm going to speak English with you, and it may sound a little bit selfish, but I'm really not interested in speaking English with Japanese people. I really don't have any desire to like coach or teach people English. It's just not something that I'm interested in. I really just want someone who I can talk with, like who will treat me almost like a Japanese native, in terms of like they'll use whatever Japanese they want with me, and they'll just have regular conversations with me. I think that would be the best for getting really good at output. So if I can find something like that, that'd be ideal. If anyone has any suggestions on where to look, that would be very useful. Another thing I've heard of is italki. So italki is this app or service or whatever where you can either be like a teacher. So if like you're a native speaker of some language, you can, like for example, if you're a native English speaker, you can teach like Chinese people trying to learn English or whatever, people trying to learn English, and you'll get paid for it. But if you're on the other side, you can pay someone to, talk to you for an hour in whatever language that you want to learn. So I think I might do that. Like I might pay someone for an hour of Japanese tutoring, quote unquote. I'm not actually interested in them like teaching me Japanese. I'm just more interested in having a conversation, and I think paying for an hour of someone's time might be an easy way for me to feel less anxious about talking to some stranger, because at least I know I have their time for a bit. So yeah, that might be something I'll try. But yeah, making strides, I suppose. I'm not really sure what I was gonna say. So yeah, anyway, making progress. Moving on into output. Alright, so I think this video is getting decent length, so I'll start by wrapping up with very briefly what I want to do long term with Japanese, because now that I get further and further in Japanese, I've started to think more and more about what do I actually want from like a Japanese like language. Sorry, what do I actually want to achieve from learning Japanese, or what goal do I want to reach? What fluency do I want to reach? And I've thought about it a bit, and I've kind of just decided that I don't really want to go the route of being as good as Japanese as I physically possibly can, because that requires quite a huge time investment. Not gonna lie. And I like Japanese, and it's been really fun learning it, but at the end of the day, I think Japanese is more of a side thing for me. It's just something that is fun, is interesting, could be useful for me in the future. We'll see. But it's not something I want to dedicate my life to. I have other stuff that I want to put time into after Japanese. So I'll probably get to a really good fluency level because I do like doing things well that I actually care about, and Japanese is one of those. But once I get to the point where progress feels very, very slow, like in order to learn new words, I have to go deeper and deeper into more obscure stuff, more specific topics. I'll probably move into a phase where Japanese is just sort of on the back burner. So I'll still immerse here and there with novels and shows, but only purely as entertainment. So I won't be forcing myself to immerse. I'll just be watching whatever I find interesting. And as for Anki, probably will stop that as well, because if I'm not learning that many new words anymore, Anki will come to a point where it's just, a chore for something that's not really very helpful anymore. I know that's something Matt vs. Japan also did. He did quit Anki at some point, so maybe I'm still a ways off that level, but I think that's what'll happen eventually. Eventually I'll retire Anki and I'll just move into the back burner phase of Japanese, which will be very nice because that's kind of like goal complete for me. Now, in terms of time frame, I'm not exactly sure when that'll happen. If I keep moving up my current rate of progress, I think a year from now to 2 years from now might be a decent estimate. So a year from now it'll be 2.5 years of progress, and 2 years from now it'll be 3.5 years. So that definitely sounds like a lot of time to be putting into AJATT. I think by that point I'll be pretty decent at Japanese, hopefully. I've also thought about when to stop making this progress series. So this progress series has been going on for, I think this is the third video, 18 months. So I've been making these once every 6 months. I think that's a really good pace. I probably will continue that until the end of the series, but the end of the series I think might come at either the 2-year mark or the 2.5-year mark. And I say that because in the next 6 months I'll be doing output, and after I get settled into output and I'm just doing that alongside immersion, there really isn't a whole lot of new stuff for me to do. I think I'm just going to be continuing to output, continuing to make sentence cards and immerse, and I could make a video saying, hey look, I got better, but it probably won't be very interesting, especially as it goes on, and I think that might be a good enough reason to just cut it off at 2 years or 2.5 years. So that's probably what I'll end up doing. So I think that's everything that I wanted to say in terms of Japanese progress. If you listened, thank you for doing so. And hopefully I'll see you again in the next 6 months.